In the post-apocalyptic world of Fallout, danger lurks around every corner. Whether it's a deathclaw ripping you to shreds or a fiend taking potshots from some grimy hidey hole, there are seemingly a million ways to die in the wasteland. However, these ways are nothing compared to what happened to Fallout's Vault Dwellers. Built by Vault-Tec to save the human race from the effects of nuclear war, only a very small portion of these shelters were actually safe. The rest subjected their inhabitants to cruel experimentation, and the evidence left behind can be tough to stomach. Now we're taking a dive into Fallout's creepiest vaults and uncovering the gruesome stories that lurk within. The first vault on our list is an honorable mention. It never actually appeared in the games, but was the subject of a webcomic created by the folks at Penny Arcade, horrifyingly titled One Man and a Crate of Puppets. Vault-Tec, apparently having run out of non-Goosebumps-inspired experiments, decided to throw one singular dude into a vault with nothing but a crate of puppets to keep him company. The comic follows his descent into madness as he keeps himself busy by talking to his puppet friends. The puppets are mostly harmless manifestations of his fractured psyche. That is, except for the Vault Boy puppet, whose urges seem a little more violent. The comic concludes that the vault was a failure, but notes that the vaults were never meant to save anyone. Let's keep that in mind as we move on to our next one. Vault 12 was a fairly cut and dry experiment. What would happen, the genius scientists at Vault-Tec wondered, if humans were exposed to intense levels of radiation? Would it be bad, maybe? In order to uncover the answer to this deeply mysterious question, Vault-Tec constructed Vault 12 so that the door wouldn't close properly, allowing radiation to flood the vault. Vault 12 was, according to Vault-Tec's hard-working marketing team, built with every amenity in mind for the prospective Vault Dweller. Every amenity, that is, except a door that couldn't be forced open by the terrified people stuck outside. Those that survived the onslaught of radiation were subjected to the ghoulification process. Many would later leave the shelter, but those that chose to stay formed the city of Necropolis right there under the ruins of Bakersfield, California. Vault 106 is another banger of an experiment. The brain geniuses on the Vault-Tec science team had another burning question. What happens to a person after prolonged exposure to psychoactive drugs? The results may surprise you if you've never been to a Grateful Dead show. As part of the experiment, psychoactive drugs were released into the vault's air filtration system just 10 days after the door was sealed. The vault's overseer was aware of the experiment and instructed personnel to lie to vault dwellers who approached them with complaints. The psychoactive drugs began causing many residents to grow disoriented, delirious, and ultimately violent. Though the overseer ordered a lockdown, it was too late. The vault security personnel were overrun. Vault 106 can be found in the Capital Wasteland if you feel like seeing this particular horror show for yourself. But don't be surprised if you see some other stuff too. There was no one left to shut down the psychoactive drugs, so they're still pumping away through the vents. Vault 87 is another Capital Wasteland vault located just northwest of the Little Lamplight District. If you've ever been frustrated squaring off against super mutants and centaurs around these parts, just know that Vault 87 is to blame. The vault was used to discover the effects of forced evolutionary virus, or FEV, on humans, with the research being helmed by Dr. Wayne Merrick for his evolutionary experimentation program. The purpose of this program was to figure out a way to turn American soldiers into super mutants. The first step of this was practicing on hapless vault dwellers. The experiment seemed to go well at first, for the scientists, obviously not their unwitting test subjects. But after just 2 weeks, the majority of the vault dwellers needed to be terminated after experiencing debilitating anxiety and rage due to FEV-caused mental changes. Vault 22 is the plant one. In theory, this particular vault, located in the Mojave Desert, wasn't meant to be lethal to its inhabitants. Vault-Tec put a bunch of scientists in a facility with plant life to experiment on, and the scientists did what scientists do, in the Fallout universe that is. They designed a fungus that was meant to be used as pest control, but had a nasty habit of infesting human brains and turning them into aggressive spore zombies. Whoops! Vault 22 has some seriously good loot in it, like the AER-14 prototype for all my energy weapon fans out there, but be prepared to get jump scared by a few plant dudes as you make your way around. Vault 34 is another Mojave Wasteland vault and is the historical home of the Boomers faction, as well as everyone's favorite not actually a ghoul, Chris Haversam. Once again, Vault-Tec thought it would be a great opportunity for some social experimentation. What would happen, the scientists pondered, if we gave the vault dwellers a lot of guns and very little living space? The overseer sensed this setup would cause problems because literally of course it was going to, and had a lock installed on the armory. Rioting eventually broke out as residents demanded access to the weaponry, and some residents stormed the exit, leaving the vault behind for good. The overseer locked the door to prevent anyone else from leaving, but unfortunately the overpopulation problem didn't leave either. The residents attempted to overthrow the overseer, and their efforts to do so resulted in damage to key parts of the vault, including the nuclear reactor. The reactor leaked radiation throughout the vault. The citizens' fates were as sealed as the vault door. But hey, this spot's got some cool guns, so, good luck in there. A vault filled with the world's best musicians seems like it would be a wonderful place to spend the apocalypse. Unfortunately, Vault-Tec has made it clear that they don't really value the arts. Though it was billed as a safe haven for musical talent, Vault 92 was actually an experiment in white noise and its mind control capabilities. The scientists piped low-frequency combat suggestions through the practice spaces and living quarters. It didn't take long before one of the musicians was driven to madness, murdering 3 others in a bloody rage. Security attempted to stop him, and it took 23 gunshot wounds before he was finally put down. Incidents like this continued to crop up, and to make matters worse, the vault was actively deteriorating due to its close proximity to an underground water source. Ultimately, half the vault's residents succumbed to the mental deterioration caused by the white noise. The rest struggled for survival as the vault and the people within crumbled in harmony. Don't feel too bad though, they can't have been that good at music. I mean, everyone in this universe listens pretty exclusively to music that's literally 300 years old. The new stuff must have been so bad that, perhaps, these people did in fact deserve death. Welcome to Vault 108, a true paradise. Or should I say, Garadise? The premise of the experiment in this one centered on leaving all standard positions unfulfilled to be assigned by the Overseer, a man with a rare form of cancer, which meant he would die just 3 years after the start of the experiment. This lack of oversight resulted in a cloning experiment gone roughly the way you'd expect a cloning experiment in this environment to go. Scientists kept cloning a man named Gary, and every successive clone became more and more violent against non-clones. If the lone wanderer happens upon this particular vault, they'll discover a scene that implies a horrific turn of events. No non-clones remain in the vault, just Gary. And also Gary. And Gary. And oh, look, another Gary. Physically, Vault 112 is in the Capital Wasteland. Spiritually, though, it's in the Matrix. One of the last vaults to be constructed, Vault 112 was intended for just 85 dwellers, who would all be suspended in a supposedly idyllic virtual reality world for the duration of the experiment. Under the control of Overseer Dr. Stanislaus Braun, the virtual reality simulators placed residents in the utopia of Tranquility Lane, a classic suburban neighborhood that would be at home in an episode of Leave It to Beaver, or maybe The Twilight Zone. What participants in this experiment didn't realize was that once they entered the virtual reality pods, Braun would be completely in charge. They wouldn't even be able to leave on their own if they so desired. Braun terrorized the dwellers, often appearing in the simulation as a young girl named Betty in order to torment them up close and personal. He kills them, wipes their memories, brings them back, and kills them again. At one point, he even enlists the lone wanderer to help him out. Of course, whether the wanderer goes along with his gruesome side quests or puts the residents of Tranquility Lane out of their misery is up to the player. Let's just say, karmically, helping Braun is considered, really bad. It's an understatement to say that Vault 75 has a dark backstory. This particular vault, located under Malden Middle School in the Commonwealth, was supposed to provide shelter to the teachers, parents, and students of the school itself. When the Great War came in 2077, everyone made it to the vault in time, but the adults were separated from the children and immediately executed by security personnel. The children were then subjected to grueling tests, with only the strongest being allowed to live. When they became adults, those who passed the rigorous tests were then harvested for their good genes, and the cycle continued, all in the hopes of perfecting human genetics. Eventually, some of the kids rebelled, escaping the vault to form the Gunners. So that's a small ray of hope there, depending on how you feel about the Gunners. Yeah, this one was pretty upsetting. The next one, is also bad. Vault 11 is what happens when a Vault Techian reads Shirley Jackson's The Lottery and decides to put their own special stink on it. There was no overseer in Vault 11, so the residents were told they had to elect one every year. The only trouble with this particular neighborhood election was that whomever was elected would be sacrificed at the end of their year-long term. The Vault Dwellers were told that if they did not elect an overseer, they would all be killed by the Vault computer. Several voting blocks emerged as different factions within the Vault jockeyed for control, but also to stay out of the hot seat. The real truth was that if the Dwellers refused to nominate anyone, Vault-Tec would play a message commending them for their commitment to human life, and no one would be killed. Unfortunately, by the time this was discovered, only 5 Vault 11 residents remained. If the courier decides to pay this particular locale a visit, they'll discover just 4 skeletons at the entrance. One of the remaining Dwellers chose to venture into the wasteland, but the others could not live with what they'd done. Yeah, listen, Vault-Tec was a really bad company. They treated human life like it was expendable and, perhaps worse, didn't seem particularly committed to the scientific method. But if you're feeling despair looking at all these bleak backstories, just remember, we'll always have the Gary Vault. Now that's a great freaking vault. Interested in venturing out of the vaults and exploring the rest of Fallout's world? Check out our look at Fallout's lore, plus our review of the Fallout television series only on GameSpot.